She turned my silence into a spectacle. One moment, I was confiding in my best friend, and the next, our private argument was broadcasted to her 500,000 followers. The caption read, "Some people just can't handle the truth." My face, tear-streaked and vulnerable, looped endlessly on her story. I stared at my phone, disbelief knotting in my stomach. The comments poured in, strangers dissecting my pain, labeling me as toxic and jealous. Lila had always been the charismatic one, the life of the party. I was the quiet shadow, content to let her shine. But now, she used that dynamic to paint me as the villain. Jason hadn't come home the night before. He texted, saying he needed space, that my energy was draining him. I didn't understand. We rarely fought, and when we did, it was over trivial things. Lila had been my sounding board, my confidant. I never imagined she'd weaponize my vulnerability. Sophie called, her voice laced with concern. "Have you seen Lila's post?" she asked. I nodded, tears spilling over. "Why would she do this?" I whispered. Sophie hesitated before replying. "Maybe it's time to start asking the hard questions." I spent the night scrolling through the video, analyzing every frame. My words, taken out of context, made me look unhinged. Lila's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with my emotional state. She knew exactly how to manipulate the narrative. The next morning, I avoided social media, but the damage was done. Mutual friends reached out, some offering support, others distancing themselves. I felt isolated, betrayed by the two people I trusted most. I replayed our last conversation, searching for clues. Lila had been distant lately, often canceling plans or showing up late. Jason, too, had been preoccupied, his phone always turned away, his smile never reaching his eyes. Sophie's words echoed in my mind. Maybe it was time to ask the hard questions. I began to piece together the inconsistencies, the late nights, the whispered phone calls. A pattern emerged, one I had been too blind to see. I wasn't ready to confront them. Not yet. I needed proof, something undeniable. But first, I had to gather my strength, to rebuild the parts of me they tried to break. I started journaling, documenting every interaction, every odd behavior. It became a ritual, a way to reclaim my narrative. I wouldn't let them define me. Each entry brought clarity, and with clarity came resolve. They thought they could control the story, but they underestimated me. I was done being silent. They watched me break, and she smiled for the camera. That's the image I couldn't shake. My best friend looking serene, maybe even satisfied, as I sobbed in the background of her carefully curated pain story. She didn't blur my face. She didn't protect my dignity. She just posted it. I stayed off Instagram that day, but the fallout bled into my texts, my DMs, even email. Is it true? Why would you treat Lila like that? I used to look up to you. I hadn't realized how far her reach extended until I saw my own breakdown trending on a gossip page. Jason didn't call. He didn't text. Not even to ask if I was okay after watching me get digitally dissected. And that silence? It was louder than any fight we ever had. It was the kind of silence that answers questions you didn't want to ask. Sophie came over with ice cream and fierce hugs. She said what no one else did. She's hiding something. People don't burn bridges unless they're trying to distract from their own fire. I clung to her words like a lifeline. Lila kept posting like nothing happened. Brunch photos, gym selfies, our self-care captions. Meanwhile, I couldn't step outside without wondering who'd seen the video, who believed it. Strangers looked at me like I was the cautionary tale. I stopped going to the grocery store. I started ordering in. There's a special kind of heartbreak that comes not from a lover, but from a best friend. I trusted Lila with everything. My fears, my marriage, my hopes. I thought she'd protect those things. Instead, she fed them to the algorithm. Jason eventually came home. One night. Late. I sat on the couch, eyes dry, spine straight. He mumbled something about stress and meetings running long. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just watched the way he looked through me, not at me. He didn't mention Lila's video, not once. As if silence could erase the humiliation. As if gaslighting could smooth over the cracks. I wanted to scream. Instead, I poured him a glass of wine and went to bed early. But in that quiet, I started to observe him. How he flinched when his phone buzzed. How he laughed a little too loud at texts he never let me see. How his guilt never showed in words, only in avoidance. It wasn't just my friendship on the line anymore. Something deeper was wrong. Something rotten. I began checking call logs, watching shadows, asking myself questions I never wanted to ask. And with each answer, I felt the foundation of my life crumble a little more. They thought I was broken, but I was waking up. I stopped crying and started listening. That shift didn't happen all at once. It began in fragments. Jason laughing in another room with his phone pressed to his ear. Lila reposting a love wins quote with a heart emoji. My own instincts, sharpening like glass beneath bare feet. I started checking timestamps. Her stories, his texts, his meetings, strangely aligned with her girls' nights. I wasn't paranoid. I was precise. I created a spreadsheet, cross-referenced, excuses, matched airport check-ins with Jason's hotel receipts. Pain turned into data. Sophie helped. She'd always been the rational one, the fighter. While I doubted myself, she brought receipts. He's lying, Ava, she said, dropping printouts on the table. And she's helping him do it. I stared at the evidence like it belonged to someone else's story. But it was mine, and it was uglier than I imagined. There were pictures, Jason and Lila, too close at a party I wasn't invited to. Her hand on his chest, his gaze on her like it used to be on me. That was the moment I stopped flinching. I kept quiet, kept calm, played the role of the oblivious wife. I smiled at Jason's excuses. I liked Lila's posts. I replied with heart emojis and miss you texts, because silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's strategy. I planted questions in conversations, casual, innocent. Hey, remember that brunch Lila posted last Friday? You said you had a meeting then, right? Jason blinked, then nodded too fast. I smiled, because he had no idea I was documenting every lie. Lila messaged me once, an oddly chipper voice memo. Hey, just checking in. Hope we're still good after everything. You know I love you, right? Her voice sounded too sweet, like syrup, trying to cover poison. I didn't reply. Instead, I dug deeper. Phone records, private messages. Sophie taught me how to mirror devices. It wasn't just about catching them anymore. It was about building a case. Solid, unshakable. Truth they couldn't delete or deny. Late one night, I found it. A hidden album in Jason's cloud, titled LV. I clicked. Photos of hotel rooms, breakfast in bed, her wearing one of his shirts. A video, him whispering, I wish I could tell her. My stomach turned, my heart stilled. But my hands? Steady. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was awakening. The truth didn't need a filter. It was raw, ugly, and sitting in a hidden folder labeled with her initials. I scrolled through the photos with shaking hands, each image like a slap. Proof of every lie, every kiss, every time they made me feel crazy for suspecting. The worst one wasn't the selfies or the videos. It was the screenshot of my name in their texts. Lila. She still has no idea, LOL. Jason, she doesn't want to know. She's weak. I read it 5 times. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I needed to feel the sting. They didn't just betray me. They mocked me. They built intimacy on top of my humiliation. While I cried alone, they laughed in bed. While I defended them, they tore me down in private. It wasn't just infidelity. It was psychological warfare. I backed away from my computer, like it had burned me. My breath was short. My vision blurred. I heard Sophie's voice in my head. You deserve the whole truth, Ava, even if it wrecks you. Well, I was wrecked, and I was awake. For days, I barely spoke. Jason noticed. Asked if I was okay. I smiled. Just tired. He touched my shoulder like he used to, and I had to clench my jaw not to recoil. He still had no idea that I knew. Lila kept posting. A sponsored skincare reel. A Q&A about friendship boundaries. The hypocrisy was grotesque. She even liked one of my old anniversary posts. I laughed out loud. She was taunting me. Or maybe she just thought I was that blind. But I wasn't blind anymore. That night, I stared at the ceiling, the folder open on my laptop beside me. I could go nuclear. I could forward it all to Jason's office, to Lila's sponsors, to her followers. But that would be loud, obvious. And I wanted this to cut deeper. I wanted revenge to feel like a mirror. Let them see themselves in full light, exposed and alone. I didn't need to scream. I just needed the right moment to whisper the truth where it would echo the loudest. I began collecting pieces, dates, photos, text threads. I labeled each file: betrayal, gaslighting, exposure, manipulation, a digital museum of everything they built on my broken trust. I set a date. The day I would hand them the truth, but not privately, not in secret. The same way she posted my pain, I would post their truth, but not before one final, perfect twist. Revenge isn't loud, it's calculated, and I wasn't going to waste mine on petty. No screaming match, no public meltdown, no dramatic post. I wanted elegance, I wanted timing, I wanted impact. If she weaponized clout, I would weaponize silence. Began crafting the reveal like a director prepping for the final act. Not messy, cinematic. Lila's birthday was coming up. She had planned a massive brunch, full of influencers, photographers, and that curated, candid aesthetic. It was her world. Perfect. Jason was invited, of course. So was I. She messaged me directly. Hope you'll come. I miss you. Let's talk IRL. I almost laughed. The audacity was Olympic level. I replied, wouldn't miss it for the world. And I meant it. The week leading up to it, I played my role flawlessly, smiled at Jason, let him kiss my cheek, cooked his favorite meals. Meanwhile, Sophie and I refined every detail. My phone was filled with drafts, backups, scheduled posts. I wasn't just exposing them. I was narrating the downfall. I prepped my outfit carefully. Understated but fierce. A sleek white dress, no embellishments, just clean lines and control. The irony made me smile. She would be in florals, overdone, eyes on every phone lens. And I would be in the background, quiet, holding all the power. The night before, I barely slept. Not from nerves, from adrenaline. The kind you feel when you're standing at the edge of something huge, knowing once you step, nothing will be the same. And I wasn't scared. I was ready. I arrived at the brunch exactly 15 minutes late, just enough to make an entrance without being dramatic. Lila ran to hug me like we were sorority sisters. You came, she beamed. Jason hovered nearby, tense, His eyes flicked to my face, but I stayed unreadable. I wouldn't miss it, I said smoothly, hugging her back. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't pounding anymore. It was calm, because I had already won. We posed for pictures. Champagne was passed around. She toasted to new beginnings. I smiled behind my glass. The photographer circled. Lila whispered to Jason. His phone buzzed. And then, perfectly timed, Sophie triggered the post. Every screen lit up. Every face changed. And no one had to say a word. I handed them the script to their own downfall. The post went live at 12:17 p.m., mid-toast. A carousel of photos. Jason and Lila in bed, his hand on her waist, time-stamped hotel bookings, flirty texts with her name bolded. No caption. Just, "Since she likes sharing stories, here's one." The room shifted. Phones lit up. Gasps echoed like a wave. One of her influencer friends looked at her phone and froze, jaw slightly open. Lila's champagne flute slipped from her hand and hit the floor with a sharp, poetic crash. Jason turned to me, pale, already sweating. I stayed seated, sipped, smiled, and locked eyes with Sophie across the room. She nodded once, subtle, sharp. The final puzzle piece had dropped. This wasn't just a reveal. This was exposure. Jason stammered something about it being a prank. Lila grabbed his phone, her hands trembling. "Delete it. Delete it now," she hissed. But it wasn't just one post. It was synced. On Twitter. On Reddit. In the inboxes of every brand Lila had partnerships with. She turned to me, her voice tight, desperate. "Ava, what the hell is this?" I tilted my head. "You said I didn't like the truth. I figured I'd try honesty for once." That line, rehearsed, landed hard. People around us tried not to stare, but they couldn't look away. Jason reached for me. "We can fix this." I stepped back. "There's no we. You broke that." His voice cracked. "Please." I smiled, quiet and razor sharp. "You lied. Now own it." And I walked away from him like he was just another name in my blocked list. Lila was surrounded now. Half her followers had turned. The others were digging. Screenshots were spreading. Affair trended. So did influencer homewrecker. And she knew. She'd spent her life crafting a brand. I had just shattered it in a minute. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. That was the beauty of it. My revenge wasn't messy. It was precise. They underestimated how loud quiet could be. They thought I'd shrink in shame. But I turned their arrogance into a stage and let them perform their disgrace. As I stepped outside, the air felt different. Lighter. The weight of months, gone. Behind me, chaos. Ahead of me, silence. Peace. The kind you earn. The kind you bleed for. I didn't just win. I rewrote the ending. They underestimated the power of quiet. That's what kept echoing in my mind as I walked away from that brunch. Heels clicking softly against the pavement while their empire of deceit burned behind me. I didn't need applause. The silence in their aftermath was my standing ovation. Sophie caught up to me 2 blocks away. "You good?" she asked, not even trying to hide the pride in her voice. I nodded, eyes dry. "Better than good," I whispered. "Free." She handed me her phone, headlines already spinning. Influencer exposed in affair scandal. Back at her apartment, I watched it all unfold. Lila posted a Notes app apology. Classic. Comments were disabled within the hour. Jason texted me 8 times in a row. "I messed up. We need to talk." "You didn't have to do this." "Oh, but I did." And I smiled reading every single one. He lied. She covered. And I exposed. There was no gaslighting left to manipulate me. No twisted words or rewrites of reality. I held the truth, and they had nothing but excuses. The group chats lit up. Friends who had gone quiet now reached out. Some apologized. Some were just curious. I responded to no one. Because this wasn't about repairing anything. This was about ending it on my terms. Sophie poured us wine. "So what now?" she asked. I shrugged. "I heal, I move, I breathe again." She smiled. "You start over." And just like that, the idea didn't sound terrifying anymore. Starting over wasn't weakness. It was survival. Jason showed up at my door 2 days later. I didn't answer. I watched from the window as he stood there, wilted, broken, desperate. The man who once called me his calm, now drowning in the chaos he created. It should have hurt. But it didn't. It felt just. Lila tried reaching out too. Voicemails, emails, even a handwritten letter. I kept everyone, not to respond, but to remember. Because forgetting would be a disservice to the woman I used to be. And I owed her this closure. I took off my wedding ring that night, slid it into an envelope, mailed it back to him with no note. Let the silence say what words never could. He betrayed me. She manipulated me. But I didn't break. I recalibrated. She posted our fight, but I wrote the ending. That thought anchored me as I packed the last box. My apartment looked bare, but I felt full. Full of clarity, strength, and something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. This wasn't about erasing what happened. It was about reclaiming who I was before they tried to break me. The divorce papers came back signed. No resistance, no notes. Just his name on the dotted line. It was ironic. Jason always feared being alone. Now he'd get a front row seat to the silence he created. That was his new reality. I donated every photo, gift, keepsake. Lila's friendship, bracelets, Jason's anniversary letters. All of it, boxed and gone. Letting go wasn't symbolic. It was survival. It was the reset button they never thought I'd have the courage to hit. Sophie took me out that night. No pity party, just celebration. To burning the whole damn thing down, she said, raising her glass, and walking out with the only thing that mattered, your soul. We clinked glasses. I smiled, and for the first time it wasn't forced. A few people unfollowed me. Some stayed silent. But those who mattered saw through the noise. They saw how I never lashed out, never fought dirty. I let the truth do the talking. That's what they respected, and that's what I'll always stand by. Lila vanished online, rebranded, pivoted. But the stain remained. You don't come back from exposure that clean. Jason moved cities, started over, or tried to. I didn't follow. I didn't check. Because they were no longer part of the narrative. I started therapy. Real conversations. Real healing. Not the kind filtered for likes. Just raw, uncurated growth. Every session peeled back a layer I didn't know needed shedding. And beneath it all, there I was. Still standing. Still soft. But finally strong. Months passed. New routines. New dreams. New me. People sometimes asked, "How did you stay? So calm?" I always answered the same. Because rage would have made it about them. Peace made it about me. I posted one final photo, a sunset, captioned, "This wasn't heartbreak, it was awakening." I didn't tag anyone, didn't explain. But those who knew, and those who didn't. They weren't my audience anymore. I was.